Pursuant to Standing Order 1062, is there anyone ready to move a motion for the election of the chair?
I would nominate John Williamson there.
Okay. Are there any other motions? Since
Do you need a motion to cease nominations?
Pardon me?
Do you need a motion to cease nominations?
No. If there are no other motions, the motion is that proposed by Mr. Lawrence that Mr. Williamson be elected as the chair of the committee. Is the committee willing to accept the motion? Okay, I believe that it's unanimous. So the motion is carried, and Mr. Wilson, take the chair, please.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Almost a new team. We still
Yes.
have Philip there. That's right, a constant.
We've had a big bench change, but I know we're in good hands with Mr. Lawrence on our side, who will guide us all. And I know the opposition, or the government, I should say, government members are well versed in this, as are the other opposition members. So I will gavel down. I'll call this meeting to order. First, j'aimerais vous remercier.
I would like to thank you for having elected me chair of this committee.
I'd like to welcome you all to meeting number 7 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Accounts. This being my first meeting, I represent a fishing riding back home, and when you're in stormy or uncharted weather, you hold the tiller straight and you just ride it through. So I'm going to run this meeting as efficiently and as best I can today. I will refer to the clerk and the analysts as needed, but I know this is an experienced committee. I know it's a committee that runs well, so I think we'll have no problems. Pursuant to Standing Order 1083G, the committee is meeting today to undertake a study on Report 12, Protecting Canada's Food System. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in this room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will also show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Given the ongoing pandemic situation, in light of the recommendations from health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, all those attending the meeting in person are to maintain 2-meter physical distancing and must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in this room. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I thank members in advance for their cooperation. Just one second. Do you have that? To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. If interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately, and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. The raised hand feature at the bottom of the screen can be used at any time if you wish to speak or alert the chair. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person or in a committee room. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the proceedings and verification officer. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed to the chair. With regard to the speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can to maintain consolidation order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses. Office of the Auditor General, Andrew Hayes, the Deputy Auditor General, Kimberly Leach, Principal, James Reinhart, Director. The Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, Francis P. Maguire, President. Canada Economic Development for Quebec Regions, Manon Brassard, sous-ministre et président,
Deputy Minister and President,
Claude Petit, vice-président opération,
Vice President of Operations,
and Agri-Foods, Chris Forbes, Deputy Minister, Department of Crown, Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, Daniel Kwan Watson, Deputy Minister, Paula Isaac, Associate Deputy Minister, Wayne Walsh, Director General, Northern Strategy Policy Branch, Department of Fisheries and Ocean, Timothy Sargent, Deputy Minister, Niall O'Dea, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy, Hugo Paget, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer. And finally, Pacific Economic Development Agency of Canada, Dylan Jones, President, Nana Sloan, Vice President. I'd like to thank these accounting officers for being here today and just issue a reminder to any department or agency that is invited to appear before the Public Accounts Committee that we invite the Deputy Minister or equivalent accounting officer in an agency because of their responsibility for the issues we are studying and their obligation to appear before parliamentary committees. This, I think, is an important aspect of this committee, is as we study the AG reports from the Auditor General, is to ensure we have the appropriate public officers who can address concerns that the AG has raised. And I know that the Government of Canada is anxious to ensure that challenges are corrected so that we can deliver better programs for all of Canadians. Each of the witnesses will have 5 minutes to make your opening statement, and I assume, Madam Clerk, that is 5 minutes per organization. So I will go to Mr. Hayes. You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're pleased to testify before the committee today to discuss our report on protecting Canada's food system, which was tabled at the House of Commons on December 9th, 2021. I would like to highlight that this presentation is taking place on the unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. With me today are Kimberly Leach and James Reinhart. When the pandemic hit Canada in the beginning of 2020, not only did it directly threaten Canadians' Canadians' health, but it also disrupted the food system. For example, outbreaks in food processing in facilities led to a disruption of activities. Unemployment during the crisis also threatened food security, especially among vulnerable populations. As part of its broad response to the pandemic, the Government of Canada announced a wide range of new programs and additional funding to existing programs. We examined 3 initiatives aimed at reducing food insecurity for Canadians: the Emergency Food Security Fund, the Surplus Food Rescue Program, and the Nutrition North Canada Subsidy Program. We also examined 2 initiatives meant to support the resilience of food processors in the agriculture and agri-food sector and the fish and seafood sector.
Overall, we found that these emergency programs helped mitigate some of the pandemic's effects on elements of Canada's food system. For example, we found that the additional $25 million that the Nutrition North Canada program received in COVID-19 related support enabled the program to increase the amount of subsidized food that it shipped to remote and isolated communities during the pandemic. However, problems with data and performance measurement prevented the departments and agencies from knowing whether the initiatives achieved all outcomes for reducing food insecurity or supporting the resilience of food processors in the agriculture and agri-food and the fish and seafood sectors. They also could not always measure these programs' contributions to gender and diversity outcomes or to sustainable development commitments. While we concluded that the responsible departments and agencies implemented many oversight controls for the delivery of the emergency food programs, we noted that there were some inconsistencies in program design across 3 of the initiatives. This led to unfairness for applicants and recipients across regions. We also found that the government had not developed a national emergency preparedness and response plan that considered a crisis affecting the entire food system and Canadians' food security. This is despite the government having identified food as a critical infrastructure sector since 2009. The departments agreed with all 5 of the recommendations we made in our report and have prepared action plans to address them. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks. We would be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now turning to Mr. McGuire.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, Mr. Chair, and good day to committee members. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the traditional territories of the Mi'kmaq, of Wustuk, Gwe, and the Passamaquoddy. I'm here today to talk to you about the delivery of the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund by our department, ACOA, of the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. ACOA is a federal department charged with fueling Atlantic economic growth. It works with business and community leaders to build strong and an inclusive economy. ACOA regularly has a regular suite of programs along with limited COVID-19 and recovery measures, such as the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund. And we're helping Atlantic Canadians deal with the impact of the pandemic while supporting them in growth and to be more competitive and innovative at the same time. Comme vous le savez,
As you know, Canada's fish and seafood processing industry is an essential part of our collective food security and our national economy. This sector has faced increased financial strain and market instability over the pandemic. In April 2020, the introduction of the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund, worth $62.5 million, provided urgent support to our country's fish and seafood businesses so they could deal with the unprecedented and rapid loss of markets for their products. And it also helped them to remain stable and keep paying their employees, eventually to recover and prosper. This fund, delivered through regional development agencies like ACOA, helped address funding gaps created by the pandemic, taking primarily into account regional needs, which could vary from one region to the next. The fund supported investments to improve the health and safety of employees first and foremost, as well as the efficiency of business operations.
A lot of the inventory issues, funding was provided to fish and seafood processors in Atlantic Canada to do the following examples: to increase freezer and cold storage and live storage capabilities to deal with excess inventories, implement health and safety measures with PPE for the plants, adopt new advanced manufacturing and automation technologies as firms adapted to new market realities and new opportunities and changing consumer demands. ACOA was mandated to deliver the program on behalf of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans because our nimbleness and proximity to the business and the processors. Through ACOA, funding the funds supported in Atlantic Canada 132 projects with 97 seafood processors for a total of $42.7 million. An estimated 10,800 jobs were safeguarded through this funding and the continuing operations through the pandemic. I would be pleased to give a few examples, but I think the members of the committee have it in our report, and in the interest of time, I will pass the gavel back, or the mic back, to the chair. Thank you, and congratulations, John.
Thank you very much. And I should say that that was the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, an organization I'm well familiar with, coming from Atlantic Canada myself. So thank you very much. Next up, from the Canada Economic Development for Quebec region, Manon Brassard. S'il vous plaît, vous avez 5 minutes.
Please go ahead. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And good day, committee members. It's with great pleasure that I speak to you today on behalf of Canada Economic Development for Quebec regions. I'll begin by letting you know that we very carefully read the report of the Auditor General of Canada on protecting Canada's food system.
Various measures, including the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund, implemented by the regional development agencies, including SED. The report does not make any recommendations regarding this fund. That said, as an agency, we take the findings into account with a view to ensuring the continuous improvement of our practices.
In Quebec, in towns such as Sainte-Thérèse-de-Gaspé, Passepébiec, or Grande-Rivière, the impacts of the pandemic on fishery product processing was disastrous for communities. Fisheries and Oceans Canada therefore launched the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund. This one-time fund was to help fish and seafood processors and nonprofit organizations that support them to cover COVID-19 related costs incurred since spring 2020. When this was implemented in Quebec, $9.1 million were deployed to help seafood processors remain operational and seize new business opportunities. To date, SED has provided almost $8 million to some 30 businesses in Bas-Saint-Laurent, Gaspésie, Magdalen Islands, Côte-Nord, and Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean regions.
Allowed them to remain in business and adjust to new health and market requirements. It also helped them ensure their long-term viability and future positioning and maintain jobs in the context of the economic recovery. This support for our Quebec communities and businesses has helped maintain a safe and effective food system in Canada.
Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, SED has been center stage working with other RDAs to implement one-time targeted initiatives to meet the needs of SMEs and communities in Quebec. Considering the Auditor General's report on protecting Canada's and therefore Quebec's food system, we recognize that the system is essential to the well-being of Canadians and the strength of our economy. We remain committed to working with all the stakeholders to ensure we are ready to deploy solutions in future crises. I will conclude letting you know that I will be pleased to answer your questions. Thank you very much, Madame Brassard.
Chris Forbes from the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Foods. You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your election. I'm coming to you today from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation here in Ottawa, and I'm pleased to provide a few opening remarks about Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's response to the recommendations in the Auditor General's report on protecting Canada's food system. We welcome the findings of the report, which will certainly help us better serve Canadians in the future. If we look back during COVID-19, large swings in demand, labor shortages, and closures did put severe pressure on the food system and the food supply chain. Our objective as a department was to do what we needed to do to keep the supply chain strong by addressing pressure points as quickly as possible and making course corrections as needed. We drew on a strong foundation of existing programs and mechanisms to create new programs quickly. We engaged broadly and forged connections among stakeholders and partners across the food system. This included new partners who were able to help deliver immediate program support for producers and other Canadians. Over the first several months of the pandemic, we were able to deploy a number of programs quickly to help farmers and food processors to maintain their cash flows and workforces, to keep their farms and facilities safe, and to manage supply chain disruptions. At the same time, we helped organizations working to address food insecurity to meet increased demand at a time when they had to reorient their operations due to closures and disruptions. Canada's food systems were stressed during the pandemic, but in the end, they proved to be resilient and adaptable. The government put in place a number of specific emergency programs during the pandemic, including the $87 million Emergency Processing Fund, which helped companies across Canada to adapt health protocols, automate or modernize their facilities to manage COVID pressures. The $50 million Surplus Food Rescue Program redistributed over 7 million kilograms of food, and our investments of $330 million under the Emergency Food Security Fund helped to improve access to food and increase food supply for vulnerable Canadians during the pandemic. Our pandemic response gives us the opportunity to identify gaps so we can develop more resilient and equitable food systems that better meet the needs of Canadians going forward. If I can touch briefly on the report's key recommendations, we certainly acknowledge the need for national emergency preparedness and response planning for future crises with impacts across Canada's food system and the need to integrate food security into our emergency planning. We will continue to strengthen our engagement with FPT and Indigenous partners and stakeholders to help Canada's food systems prepare and respond to future crises. Notre ministère s'est engagé à la...
Our department worked to consult with FPT partners and stakeholders, including Indigenous groups, on the prevention and management of crisis situations. We also, for example, at the beginning of the pandemic, held telephone roundtables regularly with our network. We will continue to draw lessons from that experience to deal with food system challenges in the future and be better prepared for future emergency situations. We are also in favor of increased transparency and equity, as mentioned in the report. We also support improving performance in our programs. Furthermore, we will continue to improve the way that we report on achievements by our organizations when it comes to sustainable development and diversity in all of our future initiatives. Mr. Chair, we are also in favor of the recommendations by the Auditor General. I thank you, and I will be pleased to participate in question period. Thank you.
Mr. Forbes, suivant is
Thank you. Next we have Crown Indigenous Relations.
Daniel Kwan Watson, please. You have 5 minutes.
Kwekwe Udlukut, Tansi, hello and bonjour. And may I start off, Mr. Chair, by congratulating you on your election today. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm located on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including Cree, Saulteaux, Nitsappi, Blackfoot, Métis, and Nakota Sioux peoples. Access to healthy and affordable food has been an issue for too many isolated and Indigenous communities in the North. Food insecurity is a drain on individuals and communities and saps away at the spirit and is a roadblock towards development. Le ministère travaille fort.
The department is working hard with partners to put in place measures to improve accessibility and affordability of nutritious food and other essential household items in Northern and Indigenous communities.
We have developed to help address these challenges is the Nutrition North Canada Retail Subsidy Program. CERDAC officials have been in regular contact with Indigenous and Northern partners and the Nutrition North Advisory Board, which is comprised of members who have extensive experience living and working across Nutrition North Canada's delivery area to understand and address their immediate and long-term food security concerns. Nutrition North Canada programming is also directly informed by 2 working groups, the Indigenous Working Group and the Inuit Crown Food Security Working Group, both of which ensure that Northern Indigenous and community perspectives are heard and considered. Nous avons également tenu
We have also held ongoing discussions with territorial governments and other federal departments on collaborative long-term solutions toward food security. The Auditor General recommended that the department collect pricing data on pre-subsidy food items so that the program can show if it is meeting its objective of making food more affordable. We agree with this recommendation, and we have taken it to heart.
Committed to working with registered retailers to collect pre-subsidy prices for eligible items. The program will also review and amend agreements with all retailers to require that pre-subsidy prices be submitted with monthly subsidy claims. We will make the results public on the CERNAC website. As the Auditor General's report highlights, the program increased access and, where data was available, affordability of nutritious food and essential household items to residents in isolated northern communities during the pandemic. I can give you some examples. In June 2021, in Iqaluit, Nunavut, the impact of the increased retail subsidy can be seen in items such as these. A dozen eggs was $7.05 before the subsidy and $4.29 after. 5 pounds of fresh carrots were $16.13 before the subsidy and $7.99 after. And we can show items that are now more accessible to Northerners due to increased shipping volumes. For example, in 2021, over 42 million kilograms of subsidized food and essential items were shipped to isolated Northern communities. This represents an increase of roughly 10 million kilograms, or 30% from the previous year. These
examples show that the program has been successful in both making food and essential items more accessible and affordable in the North. The Government of Canada will continue working with partners to ensure that healthy food is available in Northern and Indigenous communities. I look forward to any questions you may have.
Merci, and thank you.
Et merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much to you.
Fisheries and Oceans, Timothy Sargent, please. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. So the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund was one of the emergency support programs implemented in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a temporary fund, and it was established to support Canada's fish and seafood processing sector through the crisis, support economic recovery, and to help in supporting broader food security objectives during a period of significant uncertainty in Canada and, of course, around the world. The fund provided $62.5 million in new temporary funding to the fish and seafood processing sector. It helped fish and seafood processors put in place health and safety measures to help protect workers against COVID-19 and maintain Canadian jobs. It also helped to increase plant capacity to process, store, package, and distribute healthy, high-quality products, and to adapt processes and marketing to suit changing consumer demands. In establishing this fund, we took an approach that leveraged already established program infrastructure to deliver funding support in an effective and timely way. The fund was developed in collaboration with the regional development agencies, including the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, Canada Economic Development Agency for Quebec regions, and what was then called Western Economic Diversification Canada, now Pacific Can. And the RDAs took a leading role in delivering this important funding to organizations on the front line. This audit recognizes the speed in which the design and development of the emergency measures were put in place and the effectiveness of the coordinated response. Leveraging existing mechanisms from previously established programs and directing funding and delivery through the 3 RDAs that serve the Atlantic and Pacific regions removed the need to build a new program from scratch. Despite the need for a rapid response, the audit found that the fund met requirements for accountability and transparency. It applied the needed oversight controls for the review and approval of applications, largely met service standards for funding decisions, and applied the proper oversight of spending by documenting the approval and tracking of payments to recipients. The fund provided $62.5 million in support to 245 businesses and organizations in the Canadian fish and seafood sector, with approximately 5% of the funding going to businesses owned by women and 9% to Indigenous-owned businesses. The funding helped the sector overcome challenges associated with the COVID-19 pandemic by increasing cold storage and inventory capacity, supporting retooling technologies and marketing efforts, and enhancing health and safety measures to minimize risk to workers. Although the fund was intended to address immediate and unprecedented challenges due to the pandemic, we recognize the importance of developing targets and indicators that help us measure and report on program contributions towards sustainable development commitments and to gender and diversity in order to improve assessment and outcomes. As such, the department agrees with the recommendation made by the Auditor General to ensure that future food-related initiatives measure and report on contributions to sustainable development and to gender-based analysis plus. We address this recommendation by developing guidance material to support program managers or programs to better align program results with federal and departmental sustainability goals and GBA+. These guidance materials will be used by existing and future programs, including those supporting future food-related initiatives. This will reinforce the importance of considering both sustainable development and the needs of diverse groups across Canada in the planning and delivery of the programs, as well as when measuring results. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And our last witness from Pacific Economic Development Agency of Canada, Dylan Jones. You have 5 minutes, please.
Good morning, Tansy, Mr. Chair, and honorable members. My name is Dylan Jones. I'm joining you today from Edmonton, which is Treaty 6 territory and within the Métis homeland. I am the president of PacificCan and the interim president of PrairiesCan. These are the successor agencies of WD, which delivered the Seafood Stabilization Fund in Western Canada on behalf of fisheries and oceans. I will be brief in my remarks because I don't want to be redundant or boring. I was also the deputy minister of WD during the relevant time. So overall, I hope I can be helpful. In Western Canada, more than $9 million was invested in 85 projects, primarily with seafood processing companies. Projects focused on storage to deal with excess inventory and measures to ensure worker safety. It was important to maintain food supply chains during this crisis and to look after the people who worked in the food supply chains. So overall, we were happy that the Auditor General found that we made progress on these outcomes. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll turn now to our members for questions, beginning with Mr. Patzer. You have 6 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. I'm going to start with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. We've been facing challenges to our food system and food security for people in this country, and right now, according to the Auditor General, we don't have a plan to respond to a crisis that would affect the entire food system. Your department's response so far has said you want to develop an action plan and have a stakeholder approach by fall of 2022. Stakeholder engagement is estimated to be finished in September and outline a path forward. So I just want to make sure that we're not in the middle of planning another plan to make a plan for half a year from now. We're talking about food and the ability of Canadians to eat. So are we doing anything more than just simply making a plan to have a plan?
Thank you for that question. My plan is certainly, I hate to use the word plan, but my plan is that we would certainly have actions based on the lessons we've learned over the last 2 years and our close collaboration with both provinces and territories and stakeholders, the ability to roll out quickly if we were to have another food crisis that comes upon us. And I would point to maybe the recent experience of the floods in BC last fall as an example where the mechanisms and processes we had in place allowed us, working with the province of British Columbia, admittedly on a smaller scale, to respond quickly, engage and tackle a number of the problems that emerged. That said, we do think that a more robust and fulsome kind of broader stakeholder engagement is what we need to have a plan that will deal with a preparation to deal with kind of a wider range of emergencies. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, in the Auditor General's report, it mentions that, governments back in 2009 identified food as critical infrastructure. So I'm just wondering if it was identified that far back, so why wasn't there some actionable items when an actual emergency struck? Why are we where we are at right now?
Thanks for that question. I guess I would answer by saying I think we had a lot in place already, probably not totally prepared for the scale of the COVID pandemic and the cross-country impacts. But again, as I mentioned in my remarks, we were quite able quickly to bring together stakeholders, provinces, and territories to troubleshoot, problem solve on issues large and small. And certainly, I would say we're able to roll out funding, necessary funding, relatively quickly. To me, this is about taking those lessons, building on what we've had to do over the last 2 years, and really solidifying that into a more formal plan and preparedness, which I think is clearly required.
Yeah. Okay. So on a question about PPE, we've seen some other programs where PPE is an eligible expense, for example, the seafood processing program, but not in the emergency processing fund that was more so geared towards, food production. And for example, I'm going to reference Cargill, when they had the outbreak in April of 2020. So I'm just wondering, why did only, departments in one region of the country have access to PPE as an eligible expense, but yet out west we had a scenario where there were outbreaks, but yet they still couldn't have access to PPE being an eligible expense when it was clearly one of the main items that was lacking and sorely in need to prevent any delays to food production.
Thanks for that question. I can't speak to the design, obviously, of the fisheries program, but what I can say in the programming that we put together for the food sector, what we wanted to focus on was the needed changes to processes, the fact that lines needed to be changed and adjusted. There may be things like stations set up that were safely set up, and with the funding that we had, we directed it towards more significant kind of installations, almost capital type expenditures that were required, and we felt that was the best way to focus that money. Right,
but I'm just still kind of hung up on the fact that we had major plant closures, and there's a whole trickle down effect where that impacts our ranchers, our producers, the guys who are raising cattle to be able to sell to the processors. It had a direct impact on them. So the fact that these facilities were shut down for something as simple as that they didn't have access to PPE, being one of many reasons why they were shut down, but that was a big part of it because of the outbreak that happened. There's a massive impact on the entire industry here, and I think the lack of a comprehensive strategy really, and the fact that they weren't allowed to have that as an eligible expense really made it a bit of a problem here. So why was that not targeted by the department?
Well, I think the issue. Thanks for the question. I mean, the issue was for PPE was adequate supply for sure, and making sure that there was ways to get it. I'm not sure that it was a financial barrier for companies. You mentioned Cargill in that case. There were a lot of issues that went into both shutdowns, slowdowns, and then reopening, and we tried to address some of those key issues through the emergency food security funding. And I would just add that obviously as those shutdowns and slowdowns hit, we were very live to the challenges in the cattle sector, and indeed had an agri-recovery type program, as you would remember, that was there to support.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. Turning to our next member, Ms. Bradford, please. You have 6 minutes.
Good morning. I would like to thank all of our witnesses for being here to answer our questions on this very important topic. I don't think I've ever seen such a fulsome panel of witnesses before, a committee before. So welcome, everyone. So my first questions I would like to address to the Deputy Auditor General. So Mr. Hayes, recommendation number 12.29 states that Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada should work with its federal, provincial, and territorial partners, as well as its stakeholders, to complete a national emergency preparedness and response plan for a crisis affecting Canada's entire food system, taking into consideration the food security of Canadians. So against what metrics did the OAG compare and assess the department's existing national emergency preparedness and response management framework?
Thank you for the question. So we started off by looking at whether or not there was a plan in place. We found that that they did have a framework focused only on plant and animal health, but not on the food sector as a whole. So our conclusion was that there was a need for a national emergency preparedness and response plan. We recognize, of course, in the recommendation that the government does have to work with provincial and territorial partners.
And what deficiencies in the plan's management were due to long-standing issues compared to those brought on by the specific challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic?
To answer that question, Mr. Chair, I would say that we could look at a number of reasons why there could be a threat to the food security as a whole for our country, whether it's natural disasters brought on by climate change or other reasons. Our concern was that a national plan that takes the food from farm to fork would be an important element of being prepared for any emergency.
So based on your audits of other federal initiatives, how successful has the Government of Canada been overall with regard to achieving its sustainable development goals?
With respect to the Sustainable Development Goals, we do a lot of work in this area. We have the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development within our office. We find on a number of important cross-cutting issues, whether they're across the federal government departments or across the federal, provincial, and territorial lines, that there's a need for enhanced collaboration, communication, and cohesion. We find a lot of places where there is not the comprehensive planning and collaboration needed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
Now, Recommendation 12.64 states that Agricultural and Agri-Food Canada should ensure that its future programs are delivered fairly and transparency to all involved, including applicants and recipients. To what extent did the OAG consider the acute challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic when examining this particular situation for recommendation?
Thank you. In making this recommendation, we were concerned about the consistency across the country and the transparency and openness of opportunities for businesses and people in Canada. In making this recommendation, we had highlighted in the paragraphs that precede this some of the weaknesses that we found that led to, in our view, unfairness or inconsistency.
And does the OAG see this as a one-off, or did it make this recommendation to address the department's standard operating procedures?
Our audit was focused on in particular 4 of the COVID-19 programs. Of course, we did have Nutrition North in there. That was an existing program. We didn't look in the case of Fisheries and Oceans or Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada at other programs. We make this recommendation with the expectation that it can be valuable for the departments to implement across their programs.
Recommendation 12.80 states that Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada should ensure that its future initiatives have performance measurements that allow it to obtain sufficient, consistent, and relevant data to assess the achievement of outcomes. As the OAG has previously stated publicly, there are long-standing issues regarding proper data collection and use across the Government of Canada. How does this program at this department compare?
There were some weaknesses that we identified in the performance measures. I will say that there were indeed performance measures, but we felt that the rigor could be improved. There are some programs that we have evaluated that don't have performance measures at all, or indicators that would allow decision makers to identify how progress is being made or what progress is being made. We felt and we reported that that there was opportunity to strengthen the performance measures.
So expanding on that, could you expand on what are some of the root causes of the department's deficiency in this area?
I would use the example of asking for self-evaluation by the recipients on whether or not the programs made a difference for them without supporting documents, or as another example, providing information without evidence to back it up. with the example of the self-evaluations, there wasn't information provided to the recipients to give them a sense of how to answer on the scale. So there's a possibility, a risk that information coming back wouldn't be cohesive and coherent.
That's my time. Oh,
Thank you. You're spot on. Appreciate it. Suivant, député.
Next, we have Member Saint-Clair Desgagnés. Please go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your election. Thank you very much to all witnesses. Can you hear me? My microphone's a bit far away. Is that good? Thank you very much to all witnesses for your testimony. It was all very relevant. The reason we're meeting here today, of course, is looking at the Auditor General's report on our Canadian food system. And this sector is obviously very complex. We have production, which often happens abroad, especially at this time of year in Canada, because not much can grow here. So we have huge food security needs to guarantee food that is present, so just having food here in Canada, but also making sure it's healthy, because we're lucky enough to live in a country where we can offer healthy and balanced food choices to Canadians. Now, in the agriculture chain, there are different sectors that are spread out differently. As we know, in Canada, we have certain provinces that don't have any access to the sea. I'm sorry to some of my colleagues who are here from those areas. So anything related to fisheries and oceans is not possible for them. But also there is cattle production, which has been mentioned, etc. Here's something I'd like to understand, and this is a question first and foremost for Mr. Hayes. To what extent was your report completed through an efficiency, effectiveness lens? Because we know guaranteeing food security is important. It's great to invest money in times of crisis, and it's great to have a plan for future crises. And we've already talked about having a plan. I'll stop saying that word. But was efficiency and effectiveness, as it regards giving people tools, was that lens used? Answer. Thank you for the question. We did look at this issue in two parts. First of all, we looked to see, and I'm looking for the word. In English, we looked at gender-based analysis plus. These are analyses that demonstrate how programs impact various groups. We concluded there were gaps in information used by the department to develop the program for certain groups. We also examined, with your idea of efficiency, effectiveness in mind, to see if performance was meeting the standard. And for that reason, we assessed all programs and measures. But we did not observe that measures were adequate. We made recommendations to improve those measures. Answer, or question, excellent. So to answer my question on efficiency and effectiveness, that's the first angle. The second angle would be equity. And what I got from the report is that in certain regions, especially in section 1260 of the report, and I will paraphrase, the beneficiaries in the West, in BC, Alberta, Northwest Territories, Yukon, received advance payments. However, other regions like Quebec, Central Canada, Manitoba, Nunavut, and Ontario, as well as all of the Atlantic region, instead had to ask for reimbursements after the fact. And this is a major discrepancy, especially given that certain regions, including my region of Quebec, had to pay out funds first, and other regions received the funds in advance of even spending them. Have you made any other recommendations, Mr. Hayes, on that topic? Answer. Our recommendation is at paragraph 1264. The question you ask is important. It is a matter of equity. And in our opinion, these programs should be carried out in a process that's fair across the country. Question. Excellent. So I have a follow-up question for the witness. What do you plan to do to make sure that the emergency processing fund, for example, be distributed fairly, and so that this type of discrepancy among various provinces not recur? Answer. Thank you for the question. I would say it's not a matter of sharing across the country. It's really a matter of how the funds are rolled out. So we're thinking of improving our processes upstream. For example, working with the various parties to have some rules of the game established when it comes to delivering programs. Thank you.
Et merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Next, MP Desjardins. You have 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your election. I know I wasn't here just previous. I was a bit late, but congratulations. I'm excited to work with you, and I've already seen great work, so thanks so much for being here. My statements, I want to begin with really grounding this work. So where I come from and my experience in this, I've experienced what food poverty looks like in Canada. I know exactly what that feels like. I was raised in a Métis community called the Fishing Lake Métis Settlement in Treaty 6 territory in Alberta, where few of the witnesses were actually coming from. I also represent a district called Edmonton-Griesba, which is one of the highest child poverty rates in Canada. This is a serious issue for community members, not just in my life, in my experience, but also in my community today, right now. This is a serious issue where children are currently going without, and particularly Indigenous people. What I've seen in this report was a lot of great work, particularly by the experts and the officials who are present from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. I'm impressed by their level of consultation that the government has been able to do through those ministries. But what I'm most concerned about is the report from Crown Indigenous Relations. I had the experience over the last 6 years of my life to be the national director for the Métis settlements. And what I've seen over the last 6 years is a rapid decline in supports for those communities in Northern Alberta. I've also seen the last 6 years a rapid decline for Indigenous people's perspectives in this place. It's the main reason why I wanted to be elected, so I can bring this perspective to this House. This accountability is lacking tremendously in the government. Huge discrepancies. And I want to point to some that were even just mentioned today. What I noticed was under section 12.31, the Auditor General's report states that beginning in March 2020, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada organized daily conference calls, at times as many as 750 stakeholders across the food system, to discuss the status of the crisis and emerging concerns. Canadians are getting access to these kinds of discussions. But let me read from just the section just below that on how Indigenous people are being treated in this. I heard the Deputy Minister make mention that he consulted his ministry. I've spoken to every treaty group in Alberta who I've worked with in previous, and they said they did not have one phone call from this ministry. And the Auditor General reports this. It's a true fact, not just from me, my own experience, or that of the treaty groups in Alberta or the Métis groups, but the Auditor General has found it in this report. 12.32. Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada did not conduct consultations with stakeholders to identify specific needs and priorities of northern and remote communities in response to the pandemic, or how to best use the $25 million that the Nutrition North Canada subsidy program received. That's an embarrassment. These are people in my family who are suffering because this government won't even talk to us. And I'm sorry if I'm emotional about this, but you have to understand my family's dying because of this. Children, 15 years old. A boy, I went to his house, 7, he hung himself. These are real families who are suffering by the lack of this government's consultation. And I'm sick of hearing how they've consulted when the Auditor General himself or themselves have said that's not the case, that's not true. So we have some serious work to do, my friends. And I do believe that this committee is united in the fact that Indigenous people need to have a better place in this country. And I know that every single member here is dedicated to that. But our ministry isn't. It's not supported. We need to have answers. We need to have an investigation as to why this continues to take place. It breaks my heart to have to bring this up today in the 21st century. That this is a reality we're facing right now. And there's no excuse for why we can't consult. And I want to end my point here with the mention that the Deputy Minister, Quan Watson, just said how the price of carrots went down. But if you actually talk to the Indigenous people, they're not interested in those kind of carrots. They're interested in actually regaining their traditional food practices. They want to have a snowmobile in the north. They need their dogs back. They want to re-engage in the activities that have kept us on this land for thousands of years. That's what food security looks like in the north. Making sure we have that support, their traditional access to their lands, their traditional access to their foods. We can feed ourselves. I ranched for a long time in my life, and I was happy to hear from my colleague questions on Cargill. Thank you very much for that. My family was affected by that too. But please, we have to stop coming to these committees and saying we've done something when, as a matter of fact, it's not true. Someone's lying here. Either the Deputy Minister, who said he consulted everyone, or it's the Auditor General. So I want to ask my question for my first round to the Auditor General, Deputy Auditor General Hayes. Under Section 12.32, can you confirm that that's the truth?
So what we said in 12.32 is that the department did not conduct consultations with stakeholders on how to use the $25 million. A question for the Deputy Minister might be whether or not they do annual consultations in the context of the Nutrition North program, but we were focused in on the 25 million additional.
Thank you very much for that. And I know I've spent a great deal of my time outlining this, so I do believe I'm probably out of time. Chair, can you please? Yeah, that's right.
You're
Thank you very much.
5 seconds, so I'll hold it for
I'll
your
yield
next
that 4 seconds for you.
Thank you. That concludes our first round. Turning now to MP Duncan. You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I look forward to working with colleagues on this committee. And I just want to start, I look forward to being on public accounts, and I have a lot of respect for the Office of the Auditor General. I think they do a lot of important work, and I think from a public policy end, I think whenever they speak, we listen, not only yourselves as elected officials, but obviously deputy ministers and the departments do as well. And it's an effective way to, I think, affect change and get better governance at the federal level. Mr. Hayes, I'll maybe start with you in the question. I want to focus on page 18, talking about the inconsistencies in the application process, but specifically a line about the eligibility amounts for different programs. You had noted that applicants in different regions were also subject to different percentages of reimbursement for eligible activities when it came to the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund. Were you given any reason why there were varying percentages in different parts of the country?
Thank you very much. I might ask my colleague, Ms. Leach, to add to this question with details. We identified the differences across the country, but I don't have the specific number. Ms. Leach might, or the reason for that matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Andrew. Yes, I'm afraid I don't have that particular detail, but with regard to the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund, the things that we noted that were different and inconsistencies. There were different types of funding that were provided, loans and grants. The percentages of reimbursement was different, and some of the application deadlines were different. I would respectfully suggest that perhaps the RDAs or the Deputy Minister can answer that question.
Thank you. And was going to go there to say, Mr. Sargent, because I mean the program was organized by Fisheries and Oceans, but delegated to the economic development agencies. So, Mr. Sargent, did you give the department give instruction to those economic development agencies to have a certain percentage, or did you give them the flexibility, and that's why there were varying amounts by province and by region?
Mr. Chair, we wanted the program to be flexible to local circumstances, so we left it to the RDAs the flexibility to decide those things.
Going back to Mr. Hayes on another section of the report that I found a little bit interesting was the application assessment process on page 20 in section 12.69. You'd outlined that in 3 of the 4 programs some of the inconsistencies that were there. Let me ask this in this way. Whenever you do your analysis and review of these programs, you noted that in terms of the application process, some were not always followed or documented. Do you take a look at, peeling another layer off the onion, for lack of a better word, of looking at, in lieu of that process, were there other factors that influenced the decision of successful or rejected applications? And what I mean by that would be, for an example, if a minister or a member of parliament or a lobbyist or a business or community leader are advocating, do you take a look at correspondence or anything around ATIPing the conversations that go around the application review process itself?
Thank you for the question. We have broad access to all information that the government has. So we don't have to do access to information requests or anything. We have all that information when we ask for it. And we do dig into these files before we reach conclusions about whether or not there was documentation or explanations. A more precise example, I think, to your question, when we looked at the unfairness section, there was an example in the emergency food, I'm going to actually get this, emergency food security fund, where there was an additional organization added. We mentioned in our report that we did extra work to make sure that there wasn't wrongdoing there, and we did not find any wrongdoing there. Likewise, for the other areas, if we saw anything that caused us concern on the level of wrongdoing or influence, we would have raised it.
I appreciate that and understanding. So again, that way too, that would look at correspondence with the department, lobbyist registries, or any correspondence in that regard to say, we're interested or supporting this specific application. You have access to those and are able to correlate those?
We have access to all that information. I don't believe, and I could confirm with my colleagues, Ms. Leach or Mr. Reinhardt, but I don't believe we went to the registry of lobbyists for this particular area of the report.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I believe my time is up with 2 seconds to spare. Thank you.
Mr. Duncan, thank you very, very much. Turning now to MP Dong. Mr. Dong, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations on your new post, and look forward to working with you. I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Desjardins' preamble, because I also prepared questions for Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada. So let's get to it. I want to start with the recommendation first. Recommendations 12.87 talks about the lack of collection of pre-subsidy prices, and it went on to suggest that maybe we should get the program participants to agree to amend contribution agreements to include an additional clause with regard to the pre-subsidy prices data. I just want to ask Mr. Kwong Watson whether or not do you think it's possible, it's feasible to get all the participants to agree to give those data, or to amend their contribution agreement. Sorry.
Thank you very much for the question, and absolutely. When we added the money to this program, we were already in the process of making sure there were ways of reporting both the pre-subsidy and the post-subsidy prices. And in fact, if you've been traveling in the north any time in the last while, you'll actually be able to see the 2 prices on store shelves in many places in the north. And yes, we think that we will be able to amend those contribution agreements. And in fact, we're working to that.
That they all agree to the amendment.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's good.
I would say part of that came out of extensive consultation with people in the north. It is true that when we added the further money into the program, rather than leaving it capped where it was, we didn't do additional consultations, but that new money was going to the things that were already very heavily consulted on by two separate groups.
Can you tell?
So we'll continue the program.
Thank you. Can you tell the committee how much is the Nutrition Northern program on an annual basis?
Sure. So it fluctuates. It's demand-based, and around $138 million is a typical figure in any given year. But again, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the more you ship, the more the demand is, and so the higher the costs go. But a big change in the program was that the Inuit came to us and said they wanted harvester grants. They didn't want to have to buy food at stores. And so for the first time ever, we actually set up a specific grant so that people could collect their own country foods and that we would support that. That had never been part of the program. And because of extensive engagement with the
What does that
Inuit,
support look like? What do you mean by that you support that? What does that support look like?
So, for example, if you need fuel to go hunting, which is obviously very expensive in the north, if you need equipment, if you need hunting equipment, if you need fishing nets or anything that helps you to collect country foods, fish or game or whatever it is, it could be picking berries as well. We will support
that. Does that include snowmobiles?
I have to check on the specifics of that.
That's a takeaway for you today. Tell us if the funding is indexed to inflation. Is it?
It is a per kilogram subsidy of food, and so that's the way it works. It is about a shipping cost, and so it's not directly related to the price of the food itself. It's related to
if the shipping cost goes up, and which we've seen lately, and it does, will reflect in the new rounds of funding, right?
We review the program sort of on a regular basis, and so we do make adjustments, but they're related to a number of factors.
How much time I have, Chair?
36 seconds.
Okay, I'll get to. So there's just many good questions. Going forward, and I want to stress going forward. You mentioned some of the program to support our Indigenous people to be more self-sufficient, right? Give them the tools and support. Going forward, do you see any need or opportunity to expand this kind of support? Because I agree with my colleague MP Desjardins that we should be able to support them in their own
time
ways.
For a very quick answer.
I would say the Inuit and Northern people I've worked with are some of the most self-sufficient people I've ever met, and yes, we're very proud to support them as they do that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dong. Tournant maintenant encore à
Next, we'll go back to Member Saint-Clair-Desgagnés. You have 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take the time you want to give me, even if it's 5 minutes. I'm going to continue what I was getting into earlier about equity among regions. And I noted that I would like to ask a question to Mr. Hayes. We noted at 12.61 of the report that the department decided to invite 5 organizations to apply for the available funding, and then a sixth, this is at 12.61, a sixth organization that did not meet the criteria was also invited. Could you give me the name of that organization? Answer. I believe Ms. Leach has the name of that organization ready to share. Yes, I can confirm there were 6 organizations invited regarding that fund. Food Banks Canada, Second Harvest, Breakfast Club of Canada, Salvation Army, Community Food Centres of Canada, and the 6th was the Table des Chefs, which is Chef's Table, available on the AFC website. My question was, of course, regarding to the fact that one of these 6 organizations did not meet the necessary criteria to receive public funds. So which criteria did the organization not meet?
Comme nous avons
Answer. As we said in our report, it was a national reach issue, a national or regional reach matter. Question. Thank you. So that organization could not deliver products and have benefits in all regions of Canada. So which areas of Canada were not receiving products from this organization? Answer. I don't know the answer to that question. Perhaps Ms. Leach can answer.
No, l'organisation et la table de
So the organization in question is the Quebec organization, Table des Chefs, Chef's Table, but I'm not aware of the region. Thank you. Sorry, that is all to the time you have.
MP Desjardins again, you have 2.5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, and I want to thank my colleagues again for your support on some of this really important work, especially Mr. Dong. Thank you for those questions. It really helps to expand my time in many ways, which I want to just get right into it. So, Deputy Minister Kwan, I want to be able to give you some time to respond to some of the questions that were made. You mentioned that there were 2 groups that were consulted in relation to the Nutrition North Canada Subsidy Program. I want to know if that's in which groups those are, and in previous, was that in previous to COVID, or was that during COVID?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. It's throughout. So it is a program that has existed for a considerable period of time. And so in order to run the program, we have those groups. I'm just looking for the formal names here so that I don't get those wrong. But I'll come up with them at the moment. One is the Inuit group that we're working in the Crown Partnership, and there is another specific committee that we've been working with for a long time on this. I'd be happy to get you the formal name later. And I can tell you that depending on what the recipient group chooses to do, that snowmobiles can, yes, be available to it. It's decided by the Inuit themselves, typically in the north, or others who are eligible for the harvester grants.
And to clarify, that's just the 2 groups, however, and there's many Inuit groups. The Deputy Minister knows that, correct?
Sorry, this isn't just 2 individuals. This is a consultative thing for the entire North. So virtually every Inuit community is eligible for the harvester grants. And so that would be true for virtually every Inuit community in the North that's covered by Nutrition North.
So you're comfortable saying that every Inuit person in the North can have access to this program?
Yes, I'm comfortable saying that, and there may be some odd circumstances, but it is a program that is of general application throughout the Nutrition North covered area, which includes just about everything north of 60, and Fort Chipewyan, for example, in Alberta is, I believe, the only community that's covered.
And was this consultation in previous to COVID?
Before, during, and I guess as we're coming out of it now, I guess you might be able to say after.
So it was not, because I'm just trying to get to the point of why the Deputy or the Auditor General says there was no consultations.
They're referring to only a small portion of the funding. So in other words, we have a program that we've consulted on heavily, and we did an injection of cash into that program because we knew there were particular challenges coming out of COVID. But the needs that were there and the processes to distribute those resources were ones that we worked very, very, very closely with communities across the North on. And we were simply giving more money for them to do the same things. So it wasn't a different program.
Thank you very much. Turning now to Mr. Lawrence, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our agri-processor workers out there who kept us fed throughout this pandemic. Amazing work, and I'm sure our whole committee would like to thank them for that great work. I'd like to start out with a little bit of a commentary, and then we'll get to some questions. Access to safe, nutritious, sufficient food is a basic need, and as such, protecting our food system is absolutely imperative. Despite the government having identified food as a critical infrastructure sector, agriculture and agri-food failed to develop a national emergency preparedness plan prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. This forced the bureaucracy to cobble together ad hoc programs under immense pressure. And while the challenges for agriculture and agri-processing industry were very real, as the Auditor General states at 12.88, the problems with data and performance measurement meant that departments and agencies audited did not know whether the initiatives had achieved all of their outcomes for reducing food insecurity or supporting the resilience of food processors in the agriculture and agri-food and fish and seafood sector. To be blunt, we had no plan, we had no accountability, and we had no measurable results. And tens of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money were spent. So it's a simple question, and at the heart of the food security insecurity program is that Canada can feed itself. Can Mr. Forbes tell us with confidence that if there is a natural resource or a cessation of trade or any significant geopolitical issue that Canada can feed itself today without the aid of its other countries?
Thanks for that question. I would say that we showed over the course of the pandemic that obviously with a very significant disruption and some programming and other efforts, we were able to feed ourselves. I will say that the food supply chain is an integrated one, particularly in North America. And so I think we have to be very cognizant of the risks in certain cases of border movement in particular for food security. But I do feel that if the borders were all to close and we had a significant event, I think that Canada does have sufficient food supply to feed itself. We may have less diverse food supply. There's obviously some things that we don't produce in Canada, fruits in particular out of season, but we would have enough food supply to feed ourselves.
I want to move, I'll go back to you, Mr. Forbes, but with respect to 12.61, and some of my colleagues have already asked questions about this, but I thank the Auditor General for some of his clarifying statement. I'm troubled by this process that we have in place, or if we can call it a process, that for the Emergency Food Security Agriculture, or Emergency Security Fund, we had a task force put together where that task force was designed to issue dollars or support to organizations, and all of the recipients were members of that task force. And the Auditor General has, thank you for clarifying that in his investigation there was no wrongdoing. But just the process of that, do we not, Mr. Forbes, do you not see the challenge and the conflict of interest of people setting up a program to reward themselves with government money?
Sorry, the programs were developed by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. We would have consulted with stakeholders about potential mechanisms for delivery, issues that we might need to address, but programs that we deliver or fund go through a regular process, which is, cabinet approval, et cetera. And we don't, programs are not developed by stakeholder groups. We would certainly consult throughout about needs, design issues, concerns, timing, et cetera. But in the end, we are the ones responsible for the design and the structure of our programs.
I'll turn to Mr. Hayes at this point, the Deputy Auditor General.
Very briefly, please.
Yeah, okay. When you're doing reviews in terms of sole source contracts and other procurement issues, do you review for political donations amongst the recipients?
And I'm actually going to cut you off. You'll have to come back to that, I'm afraid. So thank you. Mr. Fragas-Gatos, 5 minutes, please. Nice to see you again, sir.
I was going to say, nice to be in a committee again with you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your role. Looking forward to working with you again. Thank you to the witnesses for taking the time this morning. I want to just read from the report and what appears to be the key finding, or one of the key findings. It says as follows: overall, and it's a message we've heard here today, but I'll still refer to it. Overall, we found that the government had not developed a national emergency preparedness and response plan that considered a crisis affecting the entire food system and Canada's food security. This is despite having identified food as a critical infrastructure sector since 2009. I absolutely understand that, but then it continues. Nevertheless, we found that the responsible departments and agencies we examined drew on existing programs and mechanisms to expedite the creation of the new emergency food programs. So my question is to Deputy Auditor General Hayes. With that in mind, and keeping in mind, of course, that Canada is such a large country, second biggest in the world, a huge federation, and this is not a judgment, this is just, I'm looking for a perspective here. Maybe it makes sense that we don't have a national emergency plan. Maybe these things should be organized at a local level or provincial level, I should say, because as it says here, we found that the responsible departments and agencies we examined drew on existing programs. So where existing programs are in place, it sounds like they were able to do what was needed to address existing problems. Of course, there's gaps, and the report identifies those, serious gaps as well. Some less concerning, some more concerning, and we can talk about the specifics there. But it's a question around first principles. In a country as large as Canada, does it make sense to have a national plan, one that would apply to the entire country, but carry with it obvious risks of, one size not fitting all problems? Or do we try to work at a more microscopic level, not microscopic, but a more focused level through different agencies and departments that are already in existence, have plans, and seek to refine those, and work with provincial governments where necessary?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a philosophical question that I suspect the Deputy Minister may also have a perspective on. Just on a first principles level, I would look to the Constitution of Canada and the division of powers and recognize that, on matters of national interest, peace, order, and good government, we would see a role for the federal government in many areas of national concern. In terms of a national plan, what I think it's important to recognize is that the collaboration, coordination, integration of partners, federal, provincial, territorial, Indigenous, et cetera, that is something that the federal government has typically taken a role in coordinating. I don't know if you'd like to hear from the Deputy Minister on that, but I think there's a big policy question there.
Yeah, I would actually like to hear from the Deputy Minister, Mr. Forbes.
Thanks for the question. I mean, I would say in our work, I think you probably need both. You need national structures. You need an approach that engages with all the partners, and I would certainly want to make sure that we think about business in there too, along with provinces and territories, Indigenous communities, and others. But I think that the provincial, regional aspects of food supply and food security are really important, and so we do need to keep an eye on both, and that means working both in large groups, but also tackling some of the specific regional elements. My one example there, would be when we had the agri-recovery programming for the, which wasn't part of the audit, but what came up during COVID for, or post-COVID with the drought for for cattle producers, for ranchers. I mean, one of the things that was good about that programming was that each of the three prairie provinces, as well as Ontario and BC, were able to, with the same overall funding approach, actually target the programming province by province, right, to the specific needs and structures of their ranchers, which allowed us to have, an approach that covered all of Western Canada, but allowed each jurisdiction to respond appropriate to the needs of their beef sector.
Thank you. Really have time for a comment.
Yeah, it's just a short comment, and just to reiterate again, I know that one of the concerns that's been expressed is, and takeaways that I think we'll have, is that we need a national program to prepare for future emergencies. However, if existing programs kicked into place, and existing mechanisms kicked into place, as the report does in fact outline, I wonder if it makes more sense to ensure that those are refined and improved where necessary, rather than having, as I said before, a one-size-fits-all national policy in a country like Canada that might be out of place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Turning now to our third round, MP Patzer, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn my lines of questioning here towards the Auditor General's office. There was an emergency processing fund set up, and I'm just reading from the chart here, Exhibit 12.2, that new funding for food processors in the agriculture and agri-food sector to help them maintain and increase domestic food production and processing. Now that's to the tune of $77.5 million. In your audit, I'm just wondering if you could, point to how much extra processing capacity was added to the industry with that $77.5 million.
I might have to turn to my colleague, Ms. Leach, for some details on this. I know that this question does bear on the findings later in the report on performance measurement and whether or not the indicators are there to show that the program is going to meet its objectives. But Ms. Leach may be able to add to that.
Certainly. Thank you for the question. So with respect to the emergency processing fund, so that was all spent during the time of our audit, but we did notice that in some of the tables at the back that there were weaknesses in measuring the program results. So I'm just trying to find it quickly now. So the sorry about this. So emergency processing fund. So this was, as of 19th of May 2021, 63% of respondents had responded to the questionnaires that AFC had provided to try to find out what the results of the program were. But we did find problems as illustrated in Exhibit 12.7 with the ways that documentation was provided by the recipients. So as Mr. Hayes stated, it was very difficult to identify the outcomes, whether the outcomes were successful in these programs. But those are documented there in Table 12.7.
Okay, thank you. I guess to the Department of Agriculture, Agri-Food, do you have an answer to that? How much capacity was added with the $77.5 million?
Thanks for the question. I do not have that a number with me. We would have in the applications been looking for some indication of what was intended and what the outcomes would be. I do not have in front of me, like for each project, we would have had it project by project. When you apply, obviously, I don't have anything. I don't have that in front of me right now.
Would you have a report that you could table? Like, if you have something that you can table with the committee, that would be greatly appreciated. So, Mr. Chair, if we can, or Madam Clerk, if we can get follow up with them to get that report, that would be hugely beneficial to the committee. Because when I talk to ranchers, when I talk to farmers, I mean, production capacity, that's one of the biggest issues that they bring up, and the lack thereof, or the fact that we only have 2 facilities in Alberta and 1 out in Ontario to process. There's smaller little provincial abattoirs, but at the end of the day, when we're looking at the federal side of things, we only have the 2 main locations out west. And throughout the pandemic, we saw, staffing shortages. We saw all kinds of issues trying to maintain, let alone increase production capacity. So when I see that we spent $77.5 million to maintain and increase capacity, and I'm hearing from you that from the department that we don't have an answer as to if we're able to do either. Were we able to maintain anything even? Because all I saw in the news was that there are shortages all across the board.
So thanks for that question. I mean, just a reminder that the the funding went beyond meat processing. Obviously, went to a range of food processing sector participants. Certainly, as I say in the applications, it would have been how to either maintain existing production volumes under the, as we were saying, the kind of COVID operating circumstances, or in some cases provide additional incremental capacity. So that was certainly the objective of individual projects and the program overall.
Thank you, and that's time. MP Yip, you have 5 minutes, please.
Congratulations, Chair. And it's wonderful to see such representation representing, I guess, regions across the country from our witnesses. My question is directed to Mr. Forbes. I have 7 food banks in my riding. It's a sad fact, and I wish that we didn't have food banks, not just in my riding, but across the country. How has the surplus food purchase program helped food banks or local food security organizations across Canada?
Sorry, thank you for the question. That was on the surplus food rescue program, pardon me, that you were asking that
Surplus food purchase program?
Yeah, okay. So this program, which was the $50 million program, was a first one of its kind, really, to try to match some of the surplus food that was that producers, farmers, or in some case the fishing sector had, and match that with food banks. I mean, I think the good news of that would be that we were able to distribute something around 7 million kilograms of food, items like potatoes, fish and seafood, veal and chicken, which hit or landed in about 1,300 food service or food security organizations across Canada, including a number in the north. So we think it was a fairly successful program.
How does this program work in conjunction with the Emergency Food Security Fund? And again, the resulting impacts on food banks.
So the Emergency Food Security Fund was more of a direct transfer to the food banks and food security organizations for the national or regional ones to ensure that to share the money across their networks, and we were aiming to get a broad distribution as possible and national coverage with those organizations. And so that was the specifics. Really, that was for the local food banks in the end to determine how they would use, in your example, I don't know how many in your riding would have received, but some of them would have received money, and then it would have been their decisions about how to use it based on their needs and what was available to them. The surplus food program was a bit more of a matching exercise where we were trying to find uses for food that would otherwise have gone to waste that had been produced by the Canadian sector.
Some of the food banks in my riding have inquired whether or not there was fairness in terms of the organizations that were able to apply. Can you comment on that?
Well, we were looking, as I said, to get. I mean, I can't speak to. If a food bank has issues, certainly we're always open to hear concerns. I think and questions. We have to be, but I would say our approach was to take. This was an area that was not an area that Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada had been involved in prior to the pandemic, and we wanted to work with groups that would allow us to get as broad a reach as possible across the country, touch as many communities as possible, and make sure that we did that in a relatively efficient way. So that's how we chose the larger organizations. If there were some groups that were excluded, certainly our goal is, certainly to learn if we missed people, but we were also able to, as the program went on, push the larger organizations if we found gaps or communities or regions that were underserved, to push them to work to resolve those with local food banks.
20 seconds.
Oh.
Well, we can move on because I want to get a full round in.
Okay, very quickly, in your opening remarks, you talked about you needed to keep the supply chain strong by addressing pressure points. What are those pressure points on the supply chain?
Brief answer, please.
Well, that was everything: labor, transportation, inputs, access to PPE, and other things. It was the whole gamut from producer right to the delivery of food.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. On reçoit maintenant Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés.
Next, Ms. Sinclair-Desgagnés, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Thank you, Chair. I would now like to look through the lens that I like so well, sustainable development, because we know that all food security questions have a huge impact on the environment when it comes to either processing, transportation, logistics, and of course, management of waste. In the report, DFO and RDAs found that the fund did meet certain sustainable development goals. However, there was an observation that when it came to performance of these commitments had not been set. So I have a question for DFO and for the RDAs. Do you plan to come up with a performance indicator to measure the performance of these funds when it comes to sustainable development? I can answer. Yes, that is our plan. Did anyone answer? Yes.
See.
Yes, that is our intention, to establish those targets in the future. What type of indicator are you going to establish? My question is, what type of indicator? Sustainable development indicators. All right. So what international standard are you going to follow for sustainable development? For that question, I will pass it over to my colleague. Thank you. Thank you for the question. We work closely with our counterparts in the ESDC department to ensure that we're following directives from the United Nations, which established the standards that we will follow for our indicators. Thank you. Please go quickly, Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to spend my next, so is it 5 minutes or 2.5? 2.5, okay, I'll be quick. I'm good at speaking quickly. So I want to return to the main findings a bit and ask that there's a fact that the OAG found that the federal government's emergency preparedness and response plan did not consider a crisis affecting the entire food system and the food security of all Canadians. The recommendation that Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada should work with its federal, provincial, and territorial partners, as well as its stakeholders, to complete a national emergency preparedness and response plan for a crisis affecting Canada's entire food system, taking into consideration the food security of Canadians. I'm glad to see the department have accepted this and are hard at work in this planning. So I do commend the members here for doing that work. We, of course, do know that we do not know what the next crisis will be, though. But we do know that we are currently in one. The climate crisis has huge implications for food security in our country. And I would like to ask the Deputy Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada about whether or not, whether they are factoring in climate change to their planning in this crisis, and how does it affect our entire food system?
Thank you for that question. The answer is yes, we do, and we'll continue to think about how climate change will affect food production. I think, again, the recent floods in BC are an example of the kind of extreme events that one expects to see more of, and there's a very real effect on food production in the Abbotsford region on the Sumas Prairie. So I think this is the kind of event we do need to prepare for, and indeed all the disruptions that occurred in BC in December were evidence of that. So I think we are in a range of programming, both in terms of our emergency preparedness, but I would say more generally in our research agenda in our work with provinces and territories on programming, looking at ways to improve the climate resilience of our food production system.
What does that mean in tangible steps for the plan? How can the government prevent or support producers when there's a flood?
Well, in terms of better emergency preparedness, I think it is clarity around well, first of all, there's preparedness in advance. It's how the food system is set up. It can be everything from the crops we grow and where we grow them, being better prepared. So, ensuring that we're building in buffer strips and other practices near waterways. It can be in terms of the coordination and collaboration that is existing and ready with federal and provincial authorities.
And thank you. You'll have one more round of Mr. Desjardins, so I'm going to cut you right there. MP Lawrence, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. I just want to spend a little bit of time with Mr. Hayes here discussing some of the findings. And when I see the charts on Exhibit 12.6 and 12.7, I'm struck by some of their findings, such as the overall estimate for a number of jobs supported was unreliable. There were instances of double counting, which means this overall estimate was overstated. The department required no supporting documentation from recipients to verify the data. The department also required no supporting documentation. The information to be reported in the same way against the indicator, the department could not conclude whether the outcome was achieved. These are some of the excerpts from your report. So to that end, can the Auditor General tell us how many jobs were preserved or created because of the money spent on the emergency support for the agriculture producing sector?
We cannot provide that information. As we state in the report, the estimates for this for the number of jobs supported was unreliable. It would be out with our information to be able to project that.
Thank you for that. And on that same vein, can the Auditor General tell us how many tons or what percentage of the production of food production was either increased or maintained because of these programs?
I don't think we can answer that question either. I mean, I think we did mention in a number of places that documentation, supporting documentation wasn't required of recipients, and that quantitative information might have been lacking in certain areas. Can the Auditor General or Deputy Auditor General inform this committee as to how much money was spent on these programs? For that, I will go to Ms. Leach or Mr. Reinhardt because they will have some information on that.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for the question. And that is outlined in Exhibit 12.2, where we talk about the program initiative and then compare it with or indicate the money that was spent on each program. So that is there.
Okay. Could you just for evidence for the committee, if you just kindly share the approximate total amount spent by the government on these plans, if you don't mind.
Certainly. So Exhibit 12.2, Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund, 62.5 million total. Emergency Processing Fund, 77.5 million. Emergency Food Security Fund, 300 million, now 330. Surplus Food Rescue Program, 500 million, and Nutrition North, 25 million. Those were the tranches that we looked at during our audit period.
Just a quick precision there. Surplus Food Rescue Program was 50 million, not 500 million.
Sorry. Thank you.
With these large numbers, that mistake is easily made these days, so no problem there. But it's clear that it's hundreds of millions of dollars were spent, and there is a complete lack of measurable results. We don't know what the actual impact was on the Canadian food supply. We don't know how many jobs were preserved. We don't know how many businesses were saved because of these funding. As the Auditor General, are you not troubled by those results?
This is exactly why we make recommendations along the lines of performance measurement and reporting and transparency and accountability, so that there can be a discussion about what is being achieved and the progress towards objectives.
One last question here for Mr. Forbes. You mentioned earlier that there were financial supports in specifically for the prairie provinces. I'm just unsure of which programs those were. Would you mind naming those programs?
Sorry, I was referring to a program that wasn't audited. It's the Agri-Recovery program, which the example I was giving was related to the drought of last summer, and it was a federal provincial programming under the Business Risk Management Suite that went to Ontario, the 3 prairie provinces, and BC related to the drought.
Mr. Lawrence, I'm afraid that is time. Turning now to Ms. Shanahan, you have 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and it's really been a pleasure and a privilege to listen to the witnesses and the questioning from all my colleagues on this very important topic, and continuing in the line of the recommendations, the fact that the objective of this emergency response was to reduce food insecurity and to support the stakeholders within the food, agro-food processing distribution system, support their resilience. So I'd like to ask, what are the departments doing now in developing those measures? And I'm particularly interested actually in the economic development agencies because just by the nature of your work, you are measuring very concrete outcomes. Are you participating in this work? And peut-être on peut commencer.
Perhaps we could begin with Quebec. Of course, Ms. Brassard, are you currently working to develop measures? In this program, pardon me, here we go. So in the report, mentions are mentioned. Yes, we are working to improve our measures, especially when it comes to jobs created and maintained. In that case, we do have a good idea of the jobs we have created and maintained, and we continue to check to make sure that those organizations are which received funds are still active. Question: can you tell us more about lessons you learned during this fiscal year when there was a crisis situation? And as one of my colleagues, Mr. Desjardins, has said, we also have climate change. It's something that could happen very quickly, so nothing says that we're sheltered from a new crisis situation. And also, food security is a long-term issue, so there are future problems that could affect us. So can you tell us about the lessons you've learned? Answer: well, certainly in the future we will be working under leadership of our partners at DFO and AAC. We worked quickly in the implementation. The announcement was made on April 25th, and we started June 22nd accepting programs. One of the lessons we learned was this: to try to have a better idea of our results. But with that said, we were operating under a program that already existed, the REGI, which already implemented GBA+. And so what we took away is that we needed to assess a bit more specifically some of those measures, and of course to keep collaborating with the departments because they have the public policy lens. Excellent. So that's great. That might be a follow-up point that we can take care of at this committee, especially when it comes to the development of these measures and the action plans that have been presented. So, Mr. Chair, do I have time left? Yes. So just a small note when it comes to distribution of funds for food banks. I was also afraid because I'm on the southern shore of Montreal. I was concerned that the funds would not be distributed past Montreal, but I was very impressed by the cooperation that I observed among regional organizations, as well as with the province. Could you comment on the commitment that there was on the ground to ensure that the funds were distributed in the city? Well, I understand that it's not always easy to do when it comes to a rural or remote region.
Merci pour la question. Donc,
Answer. Thank you for the question. We began with the 6 organizations that we used, and there were a few rounds of funding. And at each round, we learned lessons from listening to feedback on whether or not funds have been effectively delivered on the ground. So at each round, if there had been a capacity problem, etc., we came back with our partners and looked at questions that had come up in different parts of the country. And through that, we worked to better target our efforts with partners. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, I am going to propose we keep to the 4th round. It will mean going 5 minutes beyond the 1 o'clock deadline. If there's unanimous consent for that, I'll do that. Otherwise, I'm going to have to shave some time. I think we're good. Mr. Duncan, you have 5 minutes.
Did you want to take it? You go ahead, Bill.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks again. And I just want to continue our discussion, Mr. Hayes, with respect to the performance management. So we had hundreds of millions of dollars spent, but we do not have any verified data with respect to the amount of jobs or the amount of food supply that was increased. To give us perhaps a way of positive wave, would you have any recommendations on how they could verify, how the departments could verify information going forward?
I think the answer to that question is to seek supporting documentation and quantitative information disaggregated where it can be to account for measures that they put in place to address, for example, gender-based analysis plus, but actually having qualitative and quantitative information together, not just qualitative information.
Thank you. And I also just wanted to discuss briefly the on section 12.61 where we got and we had the 5 and then eventually 6 organizations that were awarded funding underneath the Emergency Food Security Program. Did you find? I just want to confirm that you found that process of awarding that support troubling or not. What were your thoughts on that?
Thank you for that. We did raise 2 precise concerns that we had with it. First of all, that the initial 5 recipients were invited to participate as opposed to having been selected through an open call for proposals. As we mentioned in the report, these 5 organizations were part of a task force that did assist in advising the department on eligibility criteria, the design of the program. Subsequently, we had concerns with the addition of the 6th organization because it did not meet the eligibility criteria. That's always an area that we look at. And we noted that the department itself had identified that other organizations might be unhappy because they did not have the same opportunity to participate in the program. Going back to one of your earlier questions, and Mr. Chair, if you'll allow me, I would say that we did do additional work in this area. The question about did we look for conflicts of interest? The answer is yes. We did check the registry of conflict of interest maintained by the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner on that.
That was exactly where I was going to go, Mr. Hayes. You've actually, you can not only answer the questions well, you can also ask them. So kudos to you, sir. Just on that, though, just to further that, so if you can, and I can understand that there may be some reasons why you might not want to, give us some insight into some of the lenses. So one would be the lobbyist registry, one would be political donations. Are there other lenses that you apply where there may not have been anything unethical that happened? And in fact, I think you've said in this case you don't think there is, but where there are sole source contracts, what type of lenses do you apply to assure Canadians that there isn't wrongdoing?
It's situational dependent. For example, in the procurement context, we would look at whether or not any of the recipients had been identified as having undertaken illegal activities in the past, or had been flagged by the government as not being eligible for government contracts. There can be a ton of different things that we look at depending on the circumstances.
Thank you. I'll yield that minute so maybe we can get out of here on time there.
Okay, then Mr. Dong, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm really glad I have another opportunity to ask questions. I remember in my previous life when I was a member of a provincial Ontario Parliament, I led the consultation on food security in Ontario. So we went to different cities and township and all the way up to Lac Sioux. One thing I kind of still pick up from time to time is the innovation factor in the sort of the clean energy or the innovation of providing food in remote communities. I just want to ask the ministry folks, do we have any program to support the innovation or as the technology advances, whether it's solar power, whether it's on the I forgot what it's called, but it basically was a vapor that they used to save water, and everything is in the indoor platform. So, is there any program that you can tell us about on that? To the Deputy Minister.
Yeah. Is this on? I'm maybe not understanding the question. Is it on for food security?
Well, food security, they have whether it's irrigation system or solar system, indoor greenhouse technology that can be deployed remotely. What kind of program we have on that?
There's a number of probably program supports. I mean, first of all, there would be some research work that we will often do with provinces or other partners, sometimes universities, to support some of these, as you say, like indoor agriculture or agriculture in a container in the north. There would be programming, a range of programs. I think some through maybe the Northern Economic Development Agency might have some, but certainly we work with provinces to deliver through our Canadian Agricultural Partnership supports for these kind of businesses. And then there would be our own federal programming within agriculture and agri-food, the biggest one being the Agri-Innovate program. And there may be others.
Policy direction on that to support innovation in that sector.
Yes,
that's great. My follow-up question on the Indigenous community, I see that there was mention about results showing the considerable variation in price increase and decrease across food items and community. For example, in 13 of the eligible communities, more than half of the subsidized items they examined increased in cost when higher subsidy rate applied, and in 9 communities, more than half of the food items decreased in price. Why is that? I find it very interesting. Why that for some communities after subsidy kicks in, it went up and some went down? Why is that?
Happy to speak to that. Not necessarily everybody knows when you're standing in Alert, Nunavut, you are closer to Ukraine than you are to Toronto. And the issue of the distances and the differences in where you get supply from and what it costs to travel there make for enormous differences in price, and so they don't all rise uniformly. So what we do know is if we didn't have the subsidies, that the prices would have increased even further. But there are many factors: transportation costs, supply issues, and issues related directly to the retailers that have a big difference. And again, we are doing this across vast distances.
And tying this back to my previous question, if there was a technology drop, a container, which is self-sufficient with solar powered and very limited need for water for irrigation, do you think this kind of technology will actually help to reduce the price for vegetable and fruits up north?
I'm convinced that if any people in the country can figure it out, it's Northerners. They have a great incentive to do so, and I'm sure they would find a way.
I strongly encourage in your future consultation with the Indigenous communities up there, please ask them that question and see where they sit on this, on the technology aspect of the solution. Thank you. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Député Sinclair.
Member Sinclair Desgagnés, 2 minutes, 30 seconds again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to come back to the point that I started with Ms. Leach on the 6th organization that received funds from the program, so Table des Chefs. Could you explain to me why that organization was chosen? What was the exact reason? Answer. Thank you for the question. I think we're not certain. That might be a question for Mr. Forbes. We've said that the 6th organization in Canada did participate in this program, but the reason why that is the case might be a question for the minister. It's because I imagine in the selection process, I'm sure financial strength must be one of the criteria. Can anyone confirm that for me? Answer. So the 6 organizations that were selected each had a network that we judged to span the entire country. So these were quite well-established organizations with large networks, which would have been able to provide products, food products, to food banks across the country. Question. Perfect. So my question specifically was about the financial strength of the organization. Answer. Yes, certainly. All of our partners, well, I don't have their financial details in front of me, but every time we enter into an agreement with an organization, we look at their financial state. Question. So thank you. And my underlying question was that we know in 2020, looking at the financial state of Table des Chefs, they did receive help through $40,000, and part of that was transformed into a grant from the federal government. And it seems strange to me that this organization could receive those emergency measures but still be eligible for such an important program. So in my opinion, there's a problem either in the selection criteria for this program or for the emergency funds. They're not supposed to receive both at the same time. Answer. If I recall correctly, the 40,000 emergency funds that was allocated and the percentage that was forgiven, I believe that was a program for all SMEs across the country. But I will come back to the eligibility criteria for these programs. There might be something contradictory in accessibility. Thank you very much, Mr. Desjardins.
30 secondes.
2 minutes, 30 seconds.
Mr. Chair, and I want to thank this committee for granting this additional round so that we have enough time to get this question in. Oftentimes, because we're the last, we have a tough time getting this in, and it really means a lot to see that kind of unity. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for that suggestion. And my question is regards to the very first item I mentioned about consultation for Indigenous peoples. What I noticed in the report and the recommendation from the Auditor General is, even from the Auditor General's office, I noticed in some ways a lacking of recommendation. When the recommendation states that Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada should work with its federal, provincial, and territorial partners, as well as its stakeholders, I do believe it's important to have explicit consultation for Indigenous peoples who are often forgotten in these critical discussions, particular to food. Food is one of the most critical aspects of ensuring Indigenous people have access to ensuring that their culture and their well-being survives. And I just want to hear from the Deputy Minister whether they would commit to meeting with Indigenous peoples, not so much from Crown Indigenous relations, because I'm very familiar with how that consultation often goes or does not go. But I'm more curious to hear from the Minister or the Deputy Minister from Agriculture about their plans to ensure they consult Indigenous people in this National Action Plan.
Well, the answer is yes, we will, for sure. We've done that certainly widely on the food security funding, both in advance and as the program's rolled out, and we will continue to build on existing relationships that we've developed over COVID, and we'll certainly look for ways to ensure that we widely engage, and we will use colleagues at CERNA and ISC and other departments to help us, make sure we target and get the full participation we need.
I really do appreciate that comment, and I want to just end my remarks by thanking all of the members here. I think you've presented us with a good information. I really want to thank the Auditor General for this report. Thank you very much, my colleagues.
Thank you. And to our witnesses, thank you very much. Au témoin, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much to the witnesses. Thank you very much.
We want to thank you for all being here and fielding our questions and staying a few minutes late as well. I'd also like to inform the committee that on Thursday we'll be studying report number 11, Health Resources for Indigenous Communities, Indigenous Services Canada. This meeting is now adjourned.